Hi developers, I'm Hossein Delai. In the previous video we saw how we can create web services that connect to the database to store and retrieve data from there. And we also created a Xamarin Forms application that will try to connect to the web services to retrieve the data from the SQL database. So we have gone through the process of creating the controller, which contains all the web services, the methods responsible for the CRUD operations from the get, put, post and delete operations. And we used the get method or the get web service to retrieve the list of the employees that we have already stored inside our database. We retrieved that list, then the web services returned that list to our mobile client application. Here, the way that our application invoked the web services is by using the HTTP client library, which we installed with using our NuGet packages. So the web services contains lots of services for getting, retrieving, and posting and deleting data. We used get, and in this video today we will try to use the post web service, so that the user from his mobile application, he will have a button called add employee. By clicking that button, he will have an interface in which he will have two entries. The first one, he will put the name of the employee, and the second one, he will put the department where the employee works. And by filling the data, clicking on the submit button will put the data inside an employee object. Then it will be sent to the web services, and in the web services the post method, this time the post method or the post web service will get that employee, and it will try to register it inside the database here. So the request comes from here, also using the HTTP request, and to the web services, and from the web services to the SQL database using entity framework. So we'll try to implement this feature for today's video. For that, as we have the web services already implemented, we have this post method already implemented inside our employees controller. Then all the work will be done from our mobile client application. Here we'll add the user interface to select or to add the name and the department of the employee. Then we'll have the button that will send the data right to the web services. And with implementing this feature, we'll try to respect some design patterns. For that, for example, for the button, it will invoke a command that will do this work. And this work will be actually done by our employees services. Remember that employee services were implemented during the last video that had already a functionality for getting all the list of the employees. Today we'll add another function to that method, to that class. This function will be responsible for adding another employee to the web services. So let's start. Hi, in this video we learn how we can develop the code that will make our Xamarin Forms application send data to our web services so that it will be stored in the database. In part 2 of this video series, we learned how we can retrieve data from our web services. So how we have done that? First, we have created our web services. It's an ASP.NET Web API project. This project contains a model called employee. We added the ID property for that employees, so that will be mapped to the primary key for the employees table. Then we have created the employees controller, which is inherits from an API controller. This controller contains the employees context, which is the object that will access our database and there could access the employees table, the table that, in which entity framework stores all our employees. So this employees controller contains all the CRUD operations called web. We can also call them web services. So as we have here the get employees web services, we also get employee by ID. So here you give it the ID of the employee you want to retrieve, then you will get the employee back inside an HTTP response. Then we have the service for call it put employee. This service will try to edit an employee. Then we have the post employee, which we'll be using today so that we can send employees data from the mobile application to the web service. And finally, we have the delete employee, which will delete an employee given its own ID. So also we invoked the get employees web service, so that it gives us an XML or JSON file containing information about the employee, which are the department and the name, and also the ID of the employee. Also, we have added an MVC controller, which creates views for editing, getting details and deleting, and also creating a new employees. And we have created 2 employees here. We have also saw how we can get this data right from Visual Studio using Server Explorer under data connections. Here where you get the employees context inside your tables, employees, then right click and select show table data, so that here you can get all the data we were seeing in our application. So this is for the web services project. For our Xamarin Forms application here at the portable project, we have created our employee entity, which contains also the same properties as for our ASP.NET project, which are the name and the department. Then we have added a NuGet package, call it plugin.rest client. This plugin adds some important files for us, which are the REST client. This client uses the HTTP client object and uses JSON convert. So it uses HTTP client to retrieve data or send data, or even delete or editing data from the web service. Then the format of that data is in format JSON, so that we use JSON convert to serialize or deserialize that data from JSON to our .NET objects, which is list of employees here. So we used this REST client inside our employees services. So we implemented a method called getEmployees, which will use that REST client and will try to get the list of the employees back. That this list will be used by our main view model.
here where I have a list of employees. This list of employees, as I am implementing I notify property changes, it will call on property changes, and every time the list of the employees gets changed or gets updated. And inside the initialized data async, which I call, and every time I call the main view model, here I'm calling the get employees async, which will set my employees list. This one is bound using data binding to my list view here inside the main page. It's bound to my list view. So then we get these applications running on Windows Phone, on Windows 8, and also could run on iOS and Android. So now I'm getting the list of the employees from the web services. Now I want to add an employee to my to send an employee to my web services so that it will be stored to the database. So how can I do that from my Xamarin Forms application? So the way to do that, I'll add here a button that will navigate to another page. From that page, I'll have a form where I fill the name and the department of the employee. Then I click submit to send that data to my web service. So let's start by adding the button to navigate to another page. So I'll go to my main page here, and here, as I have only a list view, I'll add a stack layout and set the orientation to be vertical. Of course, my list view should be inside that stack layout. And before the list view, I'll add a button with text add new employee. When clicking on that button, I'll use the click it event. I'll try to navigate. I use the navigation dot push async, and here I should specify the page which I will go to. So I should also create that page inside the views folder, the folder which contains my pages and my views. So right click on the views folder, select add new item, and here select cross-platform forms Xamarin page, not view. And here I'll go to a page which I will call a new employee page. And I'll get rid of this default text here. So this is my new employee page, which I'll go to when I click on my add new employee button. So here it's new employee page. Push async is an async method, so I should use await and async keywords. And as here I'm navigating from one page to another, so I should make sure that inside my app the main page is set to a navigation page. So I should change the main page to point to a navigation page in which I give the page which I want to load inside that navigation page. If I don't do that, then my application will crash in each time I try to navigate from one page to another. So that now my application go to the new employee page, I'll go to the new employee page, and here I'll add stack layout with orientation set to vertical, and inside that stack layout I'll set the spacing to be 18 for example, so that all the children items inside my stack layout will be spaced by 18. So I'll add a label with text equal name, so this to tell that this entry, inside this entry the user should enter the name of the employee. So the same for the department. So remember, our employee object here contains a name and department. So on the first entry the user will put the name, and the second one the user will put the department. And we'll have also a button with text, let's say post employee. So here the user will type the name of the employee inside this entry, so we should get that value. So previously what we do is that we give this entry a name, then we set the clicked event for the button, we give it a name for the event, and from the code behind here where we'll have the click of that button, let's do it actually so that you can see the difference. Here what you do is that you go and call the first entry, let's say it's entry number 1 for example, and you get the text property from it, and you do the same for the text number 2 to get the department from that entry. Then you create the employee object, then you call the method or the class that will send that data to the web service. Here we want to do MVVM, so we can get rid of this method because putting application logic code in code behind is not a good idea. So MVVM comes with a better solution. So instead of using the clicked event, we use the command event. So we'll go to that in a moment. But first, let's try to get the values from the user. For that, I should here use data binding. So for the text, I'll go and bind it to a property inside my main view model. So here, first of all, my content page should be bound to my main view model. For that, to do that quickly, I'll go to my main page in which I have set that main view model. So I copy this code, then come up here. So here I'm using the view model's namespace to bind this new employee page to my main view model. So why I have done that? So that now my new employee page is bound to my main view model. Inside the main view model, I should create another property of type employee. We'll call it selected property, for example. The selected employee, sorry. This one will have a backend field so that we can go to the its setter and call on property change it so that we can tell the user interface each time that our selected employee gets changed. So by doing that, now I have a selected employee property. This property could be used here. Its values, which are the name and the department, could be set from my entry directly here, so that here I can go and select that selected employee. And for the selected employee, for the first entry, I'll bind it to the name. So by just writing this code, the name of this selected employee will be shown inside the user interface here inside this entry. But here I want that in every time I write a name of the employee, the value will be changed back from the user interface to my view model here. So here we are talking about the direction of changing the data. So you can change the data from your view model to your page or to your UI, or you can change it from your UI to your view model, and you can do both. For this demo, we'll do both of these. How we can do that? Here, after binding to the name, we have an option called mode, and here you see I have a couple of options which are two-way, default, one-way, or one-way to source. In order for me to be able to reflect the changes from the user interface to the view model, I should use two-way. So by choosing two-way, I'm reflecting the changes from my user interface to my selected employee inside of my main view model. And I'll do the same here for my department. So I'll go and copy that code here, and here I'll go and bind it to my department. So let's try to make sure that this code works fine. Actually, after adding now for the action for this button. So for the button, we said we are not going to use the click it event, but instead we'll use the command option here. And for the command, I'll go to bind it to a command. The command, of course, should be located on my main view model. For that, I'll go to my main view model and add a command. So it's a public property of type command. Let's call it a post command. This post command has only a getter. It doesn't have a setter, as we don't need that in this demo. So inside the getter, I'll return a new command, and the new command accepts an argument of type action. So I should pass an action to that command. Inside that action, I'll tell my command what to do. So what my command will do, it will create a new instance of the services, as we have done inside the initialized data async. So we have created a new instance of employee services. Actually, I'll do the same here. So by creating an instance of the employee services, which is the service that will talk to our web services, I can now call employee services dot. Here we have only the method get employees, which retrieves the employees from the web services, but now we want to implement a new method that will be responsible for sending the data from the application to the web services. For that, I'll go to the employee services and add the new method, which we'll call post employee async. This one doesn't have a return type, so it returns only a task. It will use the REST client. So remember, the REST client contains the logic code that do, get, post, put, and delete. So we'll use the post from our REST client, post async, and post async should get a parameter of type employee. So we'll get that parameter from my method here. Let's say type employee and call it employee, so that I can pass that employee to my post method. Here we don't have the return type, as it returns, as this method returns void. So now I come back to my main application, and here I can call now the method post employee async. So let's call that method, and this method now should accept a parameter of type employee. The parameter I'm gonna pass is of course the selected employee. So let's pass the selected employee. So here you have the option between selecting the selected employee with uppercase or with the underscore. Which is recommended here to use is the selected employee with the underscore. That's better for the security of your application. So this is an async method. So here I should consider using the await keyword. And here I am inside a lambda expression. So inside a lambda expression, I should now use the async keyword, but where I'm gonna write the async, it's right here from before the parentheses. So now my lambda expression also supports async and await keywords. So let's come back to my new employee page here with in which I have left this binding empty. So now I'll go and bind the button to my post command. So on each time I click on the button, the post command will be executed. So it will execute the code that will call the employee services and send the employee, which is the selected employee, to my web services. So let's make sure that this code works fine. So here I'll go and set a breakpoint here. Let's make it here and in face of this open bracket, and select F5. So here I have the add employee button. I click on that so that I go to the next page, where here I can type the name of the employee. So let's say it's Marwan, for example. The department is HR, and then I go and click the post employee, which of course will bring me to my post command here, as I have bound that to a command which is the post command. So here inside the post command, I put the cursor on top of the selected employee so I get its value. So here it's saying that its value is null. Why is that? Because I didn't initialize my selected employee. That's a bad mistake to make. So let's stop debugging and let's set our selected employee to a new employee so that we don't get it to be a null when our application is running. So let's run our application again. Click add new employee. Now let's type a name. Department HR, and now let's type post employee button. Gives that here. So now when I select the selected employee, here I can see the values which I entered, which are the name Marwan and the department HR. So here let's go and debug this step by step. So by clicking F12 or F11, sorry, then it goes through that, then here F11, then it will go to the post employee async method, pass the employee to that method, then we'll go to the REST client and try to post that employee. The way it does that, it creates a new instance of the HTTP client object, then it serializes the that employee from our .NET object to a JSON object, which we can see here. So by choosing a JSON visualizer here, you can see how we can make our JSON here. So it contains the information about the name and the department. Actually, you can see that better by choosing here text visualizer. And here you see our JSON object. Let's close that. Then it will go through the process of creating an HTTP content, setting its content type to application.json to tell the web service that we are sending data which is of type application.json. If you are using XML, then you should specify application/XML. After that, we call our post async method, which will send the employee inside HTTP content. So it creates an HTTP request in which it puts the employee, which is now a JSON object, so it can put it inside the HTTP request. Then it will send that HTTP request to our web service URL. The URL we have chosen here is the in my case here the localhost. Then we get the result back, which is now result is successful status. Now it's saying true. So that I'm sure now that the request hit the web service. Clicking F5, and yes, now my application is good. So now let's come back here to this web page and hit refresh to see if the new value was added. So here it is, Marwan with HR department. And the same here, if we refresh our application here, we saw it's have been added. So you see here, my web service is running, despite that my Visual Studio could be even not running. Here I was running my Xamarin Forms project, not the ASP.NET project. So there is a way to make the web service application be always running, which is by making it your startup project, set as startup project. Then you click Ctrl F5, or you go here from debug and select start without debugging, which is which you can set with the Ctrl F5. So by hitting that, your web service is always running in background, even when Visual Studio is not attaching a debugger to it. You can make sure it's working by seeing this icon here inside your icons tray here in Windows. This is the icon for the IIS applications. So now we have created that a view, a page that will send data from your application to your web services. So let's try and let's go and try that out for our Windows 8.1 application. Let's run this one. Ctrl F5. So here it is with the full list with the new added entity. So here I click add the new employee, select an employee, let's call it Ali, for example. He works at the department, call it finance. Post employee. Then let's go here and refresh our. Here we see it added Ali from the finance department, and also here in my MVC controller also I can see that data reflected from my employees table when I click show table data from my server explorer here. If you see the old data, then you should go here to hit refresh, so that you get the updated list here. Also, we have implemented that inside our Windows Phone application. So that now in my application I can get data from the web services. I can get all the list of my employees, and in addition to that I can add an employee to that web services. The web services will get that data and store it to our SQL Server database. So I hope this video was good for you, and join me in the next video where we see how we can update an employee, update his name or his department, and how I can delete an employee. So thank you.